1966, 1965, 66.
Yeah, he's telling those guys, he's basically telling them what is happening now.
What is actually happening right now with the New York Times and everybody in economic trouble, right?
Yeah.
But here's the irony. His father, that old guy's father, is who Wyndham Lewis satirized in his great book, The Chowder Mass. Here's what the hidden plan was. The next generation, McLuhan coming after Lewis, building on Lewis's attack on the newspaper barons, like this old guy's father or grandfather. You have one generation later, here is the replay. Wyndham Lewis, I don't know if he ever got to encounter the head press baron of England at that time, probably didn't. He was too marginalized. But now in the next generation, McLuhan gets to meet what's called the bailiff, the prisoner, the guy who creates this literate prisons through newspapers, and actually shock him. See, that's an incredible poetic scene there.
I didn't know who the guy was. I just thought some old guy,
He was the Illuminati. He's the Queen's man. He's the billionaire. And the thing is, it is wild, and it's also relevant to see it now, almost 50 years later, and that those, inveterate, immovable institutions like the New York Times and the Washington Post and the LA Times are going down. You never would have thought that over the last 4 years, but they're actually going down now, and you know why? Because the internet, in other words, the new medium is killing them, which was exactly the prophet McLuhan's statement 50 years ago.
He knew this was going to happen.
Yeah. That's the way everybody was in relation to McLuhan. They could not believe it. It takes the grandchildren of McLuhan can see it.
And maybe it's because I'm watching it on the fucking internet. And he's kind of like standing there saying that this is what people are going to be doing.
That's right. The 2 points here. There is probably in that footage the famous scene on another CBC show where McLuhan is describing the internet to the mainstream journalist art critic Robert Fulford. It's right there. And if you get the book, Understanding...
I have seen that. He's talking about... Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He says you can dial up and get whatever you want from the library.
Yeah.
And there's a book called Understanding Me, which is a collection of McLuhan interviews and articles by his daughter, Stephanie, and they include that transcript. If you go to the library, just look at the book Understanding Me in a bookstore, you can read that dialogue, you get a little more deep around happening. But here's the incredible thing. McLuhan confronting the billionaire is a replay in the mythical zone of Jesus in the temple of the money changers in the temple when he throws them out, right? Remember that dramatic scene? What if you could see footage of that? Well, at this point we don't have footage of one of the Jesus doing that. But the thing is that we have a similar effect where where Marshall the prophet is telling the Pharisees, the Pontius Pilate, that you're fucked. And we can actually see it. That's what's incredible. Now this is a clue to what James Joyce that McLuhan built on. Joyce and Lewis. Joyce wrote Finnegan's Wake, fully aware that the basic story in Finnegan's Wake would become a movie, a TV, a recording, a replay, a sitcom. All these things that we experience now is what was the message of Finnegan's Wake. But you didn't know this was coming, so you can't read the book. But he was trying to show the meta media dynamics. That's what Donald Steele, the best student of Martin McLuhan, did in his later books. He's explaining how James Joyce Finnegan's Wake predicted the very situation we're talking about today, where you would be able to see footage of yourself or someone else doing something dramatic many years after it happened. And so that footage is part of your now. That footage happened in 2010 as far as you're concerned. That's when you experienced it.
Exactly, yeah. He was predicting that the control was going to be taken away from the producer and given to the audience, basically.
That's right, from the Orwellian, Brave New World, top-down management would lose control.